Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the news media. One of the things you guys should know about this particular topic is this is, again, what I did my research on, so I really love the news media. And my goal in this lecture is to sort of challenge whatever assumptions, those of you who pay attention to the news, to sort of challenge your assumptions about the news media to the extent that I can. And so that's what I'm going to be doing to some extent. I want to start off by talking about the history of media research, how political scientists have studied the media and how it's changed over time, because it sort of gives you an idea of, one, about political science and how we've changed, but it also sort of builds and sort of tells a story that brings us up to today, and it gives us a better, I think it gives people a better idea of what we do and don't know about the media. So I'm going to talk about 3 phases of media research. And in each phase of sort of the way that the studies that were done about the media, in each phase there was like a dominant idea. There was a dominant idea that sort of guided political scientists in their research. The first phase, when they started looking at the media, and really the mass media for the first time, in the first phase, research on the media focused on the ability of the media to affect our behavior. There are a lot of studies on whether or not the media could shape what we think, affect us in a significant way. And part of this had to do with what was going on like during World War II, where in Germany they were using a lot of propaganda to mobilize the German people to get into the war. And so there was this concern that the media was really powerful, that people were like sheep. People were like really susceptible to the media. The dominant idea was something called the hypodermic needle theory. The hypodermic needle theory. Why the hypodermic needle theory? The idea was the media was so powerful that what it could do was basically inject stuff into you, and you were helpless to sort of defend yourself against it. The basic idea behind the hypodermic needle theory is that the mass media has a direct, immediate, and powerful, it should be and powerful effect on individuals. Sort of, you're sitting there watching TV, or back in the day, it used to be that people were really worried about subliminal messages in movie theaters. You sit and watch a movie, and then the idea was that they would flash a few frames of "buy a Coke." You'd be sitting there watching the movie, and also you're like, "I think I need a Coke." Right? It's like, I don't even like Coke, and then you go off and you buy a Coke because the media was that powerful. Individuals were basically seen as being powerless against these media influences. The media was really powerful, and then we were just basically helpless. We couldn't do anything about it. These messages would come in and we just sort of follow. The classic example of sort of when people who believed in this hypodermic needle theory was the War of the Worlds. How many people have listened to the broadcast, the War of the Worlds broadcast? Right? It would never fly right now, right? No, people would just be like, come on. But back in 1938, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, but they had this, it was a play about Martians coming invading Earth, right? And if you heard the beginning of the play, you knew because they announced, now we'll be doing the play.
But if you that every commercial too. Every little intermission, they announced it, and people were still going crazy.
Right.
They didn't understand.
And especially if people came in like in one part of it, right, and they hadn't heard it, and they go through it, they're already freaking out. But by the time the commercial comes around, but they did a good job of selling it. And I think I saw an estimate that said 12 million people heard it, and 1 million people, to varying degrees, freaked out. They bought it. They're listening to this thing. All of a sudden they hear Martians are coming, right? They look out the window and there's the water tower that's been there for 50 years, and all of a sudden, crap, a spaceship is landing, right? People freaked out. And this was the example that people pointed to. The hypodermic needle theory made sense. People were completely gullible. Okay, the hypodermic needle theory is not true. It wasn't true back then. It isn't true now. We're not helpless against media influences. But here's what I guarantee you. For those of you who don't have kids yet, at some point in time, when you go ahead and get older, your kids are going to be exposed to some new media. I know what form it's going to be. Maybe it's going to be like you'll be able to play video games by sticking contacts in your eyes, or I don't know what it'll be, but it'll be some weird thing that never happened when you were young, and you're going to be like, oh my God, they're destroying America. When rap music came out, people said, oh my God, it's destroying America. The single shooter games, you know, when you're, like when I was a kid, no, you could never be the person shooting the gun. There was always a picture of some guy shooting a gun. But now you could be the, did anybody play Wolfenstein? Early versions of Wolfenstein? No? My son, pardon? My son used to play this game where what it was you'd go into this dungeon and you would kill Nazis, and they had these Dobermans with them, and you would kill these Dobermans too, and then try and get through this tunnel. And I remember when he said, and Miles, he's your guy's age, he's 21, he loved playing this game. But my wife got really concerned, like, this is terrible. And I said, why? And she said, he's killing dogs. And she said nothing about the Nazis, but we're Jewish, so it's like, okay, kill a Nazi, no big deal. But killing dogs, that really offended her. And I said, the dogs are in the same spot every time. He's not actually killing dogs. This is just a program. She was convinced that he was going to become desensitized to the idea of going ahead and shooting dogs. Like, hey, I'm bored. I'm going to go kill a dog. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? It's going to happen. When you guys get older, there's going to be some new media that your kids are going to be exposed to. And somebody's going to tell you that it's destroying America. It's not. The hypodermic needle theory is not true. Every once in a while, it rears its ugly head, but it's not true. So the researchers started off with this idea that the media was incredibly, incredibly powerful. And eventually it became clear that it wasn't. And so what often happens among researchers is if they go too far in one direction, the way they correct it is to go too far in the other direction. So in the next phase of research focused on the effect of the media on voting. It wasn't just behavior. They wanted to see, can the media change the way people vote? And the dominant idea here was what they called the minimal effects theory. And the basic idea behind here, and by minimal effects, what does that mean?
Minimal. No effect.
Real small, no effect, hardly any. Right? That the mass media had a very limited effect on people's political preferences. That they'd gone from the media is extraordinarily powerful to the media has hardly any impact whatsoever. The classic example of this was a study called The People's Choice in 1944. And here's what they did in this study. Let me go to the draft view for right now. Here's what they did in this study, in The People's Choice. It's the name of a book. What they did is they found this town in, I think it was Ohio. Erie, Ohio. That was the name of the town. And what they knew about this town was that this town had voted the exact same way that the country had voted for the last 5 elections. What do I mean by that? That if the country, if in the last election it was 52% voted Republican and 48 voted Democrat, that's how Erie voted. Then if the next election after that it was 47% Republican, 53% Democrat, that's how Erie voted. And for 5 straight elections, Erie, the city, voted exactly the same way that the country did. And so what they said was, you know what, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into Erie before the next election. We're going to take a random sample. You know, you guys know what that means. We're going to take a random sample of people in the city, and we're going to interview them before the election starts, before the presidential election starts. And then we're going to follow them all the way through the campaign and see how much effect the media has on them. Right? So does that make sense what they're doing? So they go and they essentially what they did is they went at every 5th door. They just picked the first house, and then every 5th door they just went ahead and they interviewed a whole bunch of people. It was a big study. What they found in interviewing people before the campaign, then what they watched during the campaign, and then asking them questions after they voted, that exposure to the media didn't change how people voted. If somebody was planning on voting Democrat before the election, that's how they voted after. If somebody was planning on voting Republican before the election, that's how they voted after. That there was very little evidence that the media had any effect whatsoever on how people voted. What they did find, though, was some influence. There are a group of people that they refer to as opinion leaders. Opinion leaders. Opinion leaders aren't like people on the radio or people, you know, like journalists. Is there someone in your life who, when you have questions about politics, you go to and you say, you know, hey, Uncle Bill, what do you think about this? Or if he's, or your aunt, somebody that you trust on matters of politics?
Parentals.
Pardon?
The parentals.
Your parents. Anybody else? You guys have somebody? Who do you have?
No, my aunt.
Your aunt.
Yeah.
Like she's like she's just smart. She knows a lot.
She works in the business. So.
Okay. And I know in my block, because I'm the only one with the PhD on my block, when people have political questions, they come and talk to me. Those are examples of opinion leaders. People in your life that you know, that you trust. What they found is that opinion leaders could change how citizens voted. Hearing your Uncle Bill, if you were planning on voting Democratic and Uncle Bill says, hey, you know, these Democrats are clowns. You know, I didn't know that. Uncle Bill might be able to affect your opinion, but just being exposed to the media by itself doesn't get the job done. Now, just as a suggestion, if you didn't write down the definition of opinion leaders, that was probably a mistake. These are the kind, if you see something italicized, that means you're going to need to know it. And just if you know what I mean by opinion leaders now, that's cool. But we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, and then we're going to have another lecture, and then we're going to have another lecture, and then we're going to have an exam. And there's going to be like 20 or 30 of these. I italicize these things as a clue to you guys. Write down the definition. Even if you think you're going to remember it, write it down. Okay, so opinion leaders are people that we know personally, that we trust. And it turned out that exposure to the media, that didn't change how people voted, but opinion leaders could change how people voted. The media itself didn't have very much power, couldn't do very much. In the same way, oh, here we go. Let me just stop this and start it